Last week we began a series talking about what God does to try to get people's attention. And we talked about the fact that He has almost no inhibitions when He sees that He needs to get a hold of somebody. Now, by zero inhibitions, what we mean is that God does things that make us sometimes extremely uncomfortable. And we're going to go through one of those in today. Is probably one of the most uncomfortable things that we could come across in the Scriptures. And because of this, bear with me, people get themselves into what we call pretzel logic. Pretzel logic is when you come to a conclusion that it disagrees with something else, and you don't know how you're going to try to combine these two conclusions that you have. Or this conclusion I've reached based on this logic makes it difficult for me to make these two things agree. I have this belief, I have this fact over here, and so I have to try to twist myself. I talked with a guy at a church, and I was talking with this young guy, and he had come to the conclusion that the God of the Old Testament didn't appear to him to be the God that he understood. And so his conclusion then was that the Old Testament wasn't really inspired. That it was a collection of men's thoughts and then mostly good, but there's these things because how can that be? He said these words, I feel morally superior to the God that I see observed in the Old Testament. This is what I call pretzel logic, because we have a problem in that He accepted the New Testament, and the problem we have there is that Christ accepted the Old Testament. And see, now we've got a major problem in logic. How can you not accept a testament that Christ accepted if you accept the New Testament? You're going to have to come to another conclusion, and that is that your understanding perhaps of the Old Testament is incorrect. That you're going to have to look at things a little bit differently. And one of the things that you're going to have to look at differently is that God sometimes does things in an effort to get our attention that are way out of the box. We can't put God in this little tiny sphere of my understanding. Someone told me one time that we need a God that we don't understand. We need that God that we don't understand, because if I can understand God, that means that if He fits in my mind. And if He fits in my mind, He's no bigger than me. And if He's no bigger than me, He can't help me. So I need a God that I absolutely cannot understand. We're talking about forgiveness today, and that's when we talk about forgiveness, we typically expect light and fluffy cotton candy sermons. And this is not going to be a cotton candy sermon, even though we're talking about a fluffy topic. The sermon in the text that we're going to read today, you're going to wonder why in the world we're reading these texts on a Sunday morning. There are going to be people that are uncomfortable. And now what I want you to realize is that this wasn't just a story. And for those of you who might not have been here last week, we're looking at some prophets in the Old Testament and how God used 4 different prophets in extremely strange, radical ways to get a message to His people. We talked about trusting God and Daniel and Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Last week, we were talking about a man by the name of Hosea. You might have heard that name. Maybe you haven't even read the book. I don't think I read that book till I was in Bible college. Just Hosea. Okay, it's one of those things when you learn to memorize in camp. You memorize the books and boom, and you're on to whatever books come after, right? And Hosea teaches us this lesson. We're going to wonder, what is it like to be God? When we talk about forgiveness, Hosea gives us this picture. of forgiveness. The word of the Lord that came to Hosea, the son of Beeri, in the days of Uzziah and a bunch of other guys, kings of Judah. So he was a prophet for about 80 years or so. The son of Joash, the king of Israel. So when the Lord first spoke through Hosea, the Lord said to Hosea, "Go marry a prostitute." We're talking about an extreme way of using a prophet to teach a lesson to people. But he goes on. Have children who are, I've neatened this up, okay, if you want to read it in the King James, it's a little bit stronger. Who are the result of her affairs? For the land commits great adultery by forsaking the Lord. Now, the gospel is called the good news. The problem with the good news is that you sometimes need to know the bad news before the good news makes sense. And so, the lesson of forgiveness begins with a really harsh kind of a message. And there's two things in here that he describes what it's like to be God before he can explain to them forgiveness. The first, what it's like to be cheated on. Hosea has to be a living example. Now, it's uncomfortable to read verses like this. But imagine that God actually did this. There's a time when this wasn't a story. There was a time when the preacher came in and sat down in church with a prostitute next to him and her kids. That actually happened. Don't think I would have got the job. What it's like to be cheated on. What it's like to devote yourself to a group of people and have them disrespected. No, we like movies that are all happy endings. Those Disney's, all the other movies, we love movies with happy endings. But this doesn't appear to be going anywhere good, does it? Because the children that she has, and we're going to see, are actually after he marries her. These weren't kids that, okay, well, this is some great reclamation project and everything she marries and it's all happened. This is not the story of Rahab who gave it all up and became an ancestor of Jesus, but she gave it up to become a part. This is not that story. This is a very uncomfortable story. This is another thing what it's like to be God, to give your grace to people and have the bad behavior continue. These, as we're going to see, were children born to him after he married. They were born to him legally. They were not his children. Think that would make some waves in church? This is not just a story. I want you to remember that this, I don't know how long this went on for. But God says, I'm trying to reach these people. I need a dramatic message to reach these people. And this is the message he chose. Hosea is terribly inconvenienced, I'm sure. I'm sure that when this idea was first proposed to him, he wasn't like, sign me up, this is great. I'm sure that he had some sit-downs with God and said, you think maybe we could just tell an allegory in church and I could say, it's like this, if this happened. No, God says, this is what's going to be. This is your entire life. Welcome to your life. Okay? That's the way it's going to be. Now Hosea went along with it. I wonder if Hosea learned the most about forgiveness of all the people that he talked to, I wonder if Hosea learned more about forgiveness than anybody else that ever heard a sermon he preached. I know that when I preach sermons, I get a lot more out of them probably than the people who sit there. Because I have to sit there and go through everything and write it down. And so I'm in it for a week or more. You guys get a half an hour of it. But I'm in it for a long time. And I wonder if I get more out of my own sermons than other people do. But I'm sure having this go on for however many years, Hosea gets quite a lesson in forgiveness. What it's like to be God is to forgive without limit. That's what this lesson is. Look at some of the children. The Lord said to him, call his name, this is his first son that's born after all this. Jezreel, for in a little while I will scatter. That's what Jezreel means, to scatter. The house of Jehu. So his son, well, basically, to make this short, his son was named to bring attention to the people that God was going to get revenge on something that had happened a long time earlier. That's what your son's name means. And that's nice. What are you going to name your kid? Revenge. That's basically what's going on here. And so it's not just this, but now God's using everything in his family to make these lessons to Israel and to Judah. It's worse. Hosea 1:6. She conceived again. Oh boy. There's not going to be the nice Facebook announcements, the unique Facebook announcements of, I guess they're going to have another one. Oh no, I've got to tell the church I'm having another one. She conceived again, gave birth to a daughter, and the Lord said to call her name Laruhamah, for I will have no more mercy. That's what the name means, Laruhamah, no mercy. On the house of Israel, to forgive them all. So wait, this is a lesson about forgiveness. We're going to get there. Israel and Judah were divided. Israel, this is in the time of the son of Joash. Joash was a king who had started good, the best king of all of the northern tribes, and even he ended up as a murderer. That's the best they had. That's the best. You think your choices are tough. Israel wasn't forgiven because they never turned back to God. This is going to be more a lesson about Judah when we talk about forgiveness, which was the southern, where Jerusalem was. And the Lord said, third child. Call his name Lo-Ami, for you are not my people. What a nice, pleasant name to name your kid. You're not my people. And I am not your God. This doesn't sound like, I told you, this is not light and fluffy. This doesn't sound like this is going the right direction, does it? This does not look like a Disney movie at all. Where in the world does the forgiveness come in? Well, we're going to get there. And so just keep in mind that most of this is referring to the northern tribes where God doesn't have mercy. The next chapter begins. It says, plead with your mother. Plead, for she is not my wife, and I am not her husband. Plead that she put away her prostitution and her adultery. Plead with her. It is to forgive without limit. In the middle of all this, God is using Hosea and his wife and this family situation, this turbulent thing that's happening, to try to get his people back. Plead with her to come back. He's still open to forgiveness, and primarily at this point now we're talking about Judah. Israel was going to be taken into captivity, and the events of this are about 100 or so years before the events that we talked about, 150 years before the events we talked about last week. Israel, the northern, will soon be taken captive into Assyria, and they won't be heard of again. Judah then will go into Babylon, be there for 70 years, and come back. That's the history. This woman represented continual unfaithfulness. That's the bad news. But wait a second, it says she's not my wife. Well, she was his wife. Two people can marry and have no relationship, can't they? There can be two people that just grow apart. That happens all the time. They live under the same roof, but they might as well not. And at some point, oftentimes, they wake up and say, what in the world is happening here? I do not feel connected anymore. Yeah, I have a ring on my finger. It's not a wife. It's not a husband. This is not a family. And that's what's happened here. And this is what God's saying. Yes, okay. We started out, you were my people and all this, but you're not my people. We have grown apart. The last chapters, there's 14 chapters I think in Hosea. The last chapter that talks about Hosea's wife is chapter 3. It's kind of interesting. After that, I'm going to see what happens. And it's almost going to sound strange, this verse. I don't know why that's not. There we go. The Lord said to me, go again and love a woman who is loved by another. And it almost sounds like he's talking about a different person. I'm like, this is going to be really strange. That's not. We'll get to what this is talking about. This is still the same woman. Love a woman who is loved by another man who is an adulteress, even as the Lord loved the children of Israel, though they turn to the other. So I brought her back with silver and barley, and I said to her, you must dwell as mine for many days. You will not be a prostitute anymore. You will not belong to another man, and so I will also be yours. The children of Israel shall dwell many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or pillar, but afterwards the children of Israel return and seek the Lord their God and David their king, for they shall come in fear to the Lord God and to his goodness in the latter days. This is the same woman. She is now living with another man. And Hosea goes back and says, let's go. So as I said, this is about forgiveness that we cannot imagine. He doesn't just say, let's go, get in the car. He goes and pays another dowry for her. That's what the word redeemed means, to buy back. You've already bought it and you've got to buy it again. Hosea pays another dowry for his wife, who, quite frankly, wasn't worth the first one. That is forgiveness that we cannot imagine. And it says, wait a second, Israel's return. I thought you said Israel wouldn't return. Yeah, I did say that. If this Israel that we talked about will not return. So who then is this talking about? Well, it's talking about something. We get these verses. He just said, Israel's not my people, and they're going and they're not coming back. And now he says, Israel's going to come back. What in the world? Hosea, get your message straight. There's a verse in the New Testament, Romans 11:26. It says this, in this way all Israel will be saved. As it is written, the deliverer will come from Zion, and he will banish ungodliness from Jacob. Elsewhere, Romans, he says, it is not all Israel who descended from Israel. Israel is not just a genetic lineage. It's an idea. It's a concept. God's people. One of the verses that we read said that it wouldn't be done with sword. But God would do it. God would bring them back. It wasn't going to be the conquering of Babylon or of Assyria that he was talking. That's something different, but it was going to be something that the Lord did. Something that Christ did. The Lord Himself, God, would come and bring His people back to show this lesson of ultimate forgiveness. As we said, apparently the woman got it. After however many years. Because after chapter 3, she's not used as an example any longer. That's, I suppose, the good news, isn't it? I wonder sometimes at the relationship from that point on between Hosea and his wife. And the children. What happened to the children? I don't know. But the lesson is that God has great patience with us and great forgiveness. That the things you think that are too bad for God to forgive, God's like, I've seen that before. I've forgiven worse. I've had patience with worse and longer. Why? This is what I wonder. Why, when this woman was first given the opportunity to have a name, to have respect, to have the life that you would think everyone would want, and she could get rid of that, why didn't she jump at the chance? Why did she continue to go back to this life? I do not know. Maybe her lifestyle was such a habit she couldn't break it. We do things out of habit, don't we? Maybe her self-esteem was so low because of years of this, she didn't think she was worth anything better. God couldn't forgive me. People couldn't love me. Who am I? This is what I am. And her self-image perhaps was just, I'm sure it was, beaten down by the lifestyle she had lived. Who knows? Maybe she's so damaged that this was how she thought that she earned her value. Maybe this is how she got her self-image was through relationships, and she needed that affirmation, and this is how she best knew how to do it. That's how she had coped for years. I do not know. But eventually she got the idea. Eventually someone showing love to her and forgiveness and not judging her brought her back patience that boggles my mind. And God shows this same love and the same forgiveness, the same patience. He says, when we are faithless, He is faithful. He cannot deny Himself. Think about that as you go through your week. You think, we come here on Sunday morning and we kind of reminded a little bit of the week's events, and we think, these are the things I've said, these are the things I've done, these are the things I've thought. And we're reminded of the perfection of God, and just the contrast between us and God. When we are faithless, God is faithful. That incredible forgiveness is not just a story. It is a real event that a man died on a cross. It's not a cartoon. It is a real event in history. Hosea had to be, someone had to be this bizarre example, this extreme illustration to a people of what God was willing to do to keep that connection to bring people back from the destructive lifestyles that they live. Who's given you a lot of love? Can you think of people who have gone above and beyond the call? I'm not talking about your parents. We know parents are our parents. I'm talking about other people. Can you think of people who have gone above and beyond the call of duty? And maybe not all the time, but maybe even in one instance. Has God brought a person into your life who did something dramatic? How far have you been pushed to show God's love? Has God asked of you something dramatic? Have you done anything dramatic like this? I'm not like this. This is not something that God did every day. Understand it. Of all the minor prophets, we have 4 that show some great, incredible, weird stories. These are things that God did at dramatic times. He did dramatic things. But have you done something above and beyond the call of duty? Something that makes you uncomfortable. To show love is to feel pain. If you have never felt pain, then you have never loved. You've never made yourself vulnerable. You haven't put yourself out there because love is pain. Because who we love are other people, and other people are not perfect. And those people are going to hurt us at some point in time. The only way to insulate yourself from pain is to insulate yourself from relationships. I'll send a check. Checks are nice and they're very impersonal. Keeps people distant. But to get involved with someone's life is to feel pain. Understand, the lesson we've learned is that this is how God has reacted to us in our life. He's been willing to feel pain for me. So to love others is to make yourself vulnerable. In the end, though, it's to see the joy, not every one of them, but of the ones who act out of character and hurt you, when you're like, I'm trying to do something kind for you, and this is not how you're supposed to react. And to see them eventually get it. To see the light go on, bing, and they finally get it. To see that joy when they come back, that's worth all the pain. It is worth all the pain. It is worth all the hurts and all the patience and the things you have to put up with. To God it was worth it. To see people come back and say, I get it. I want to be your people. This is not just a lesson about us here in this room, and it is about that. The things that you deal with and struggle with and think that you are too bad for God to forgive. And the habits that you have that are hard to break and feel that you're worthless, if that's the things that you deal with, this sermon's for you, but this is also for how we are used out here. When we leave here, the challenge is, and depending on where you are at this morning, you may react to this differently. If it's something personal like we've talked about, you get that taken care of. This is a place where there is no judgment. But if you struggle with showing that love and making yourself vulnerable, we also need that challenge as well. Michael.